And the interactive begins. Cheers, everybody. How are you? Doing okay? Hope you're doing well. Cheers to you guys. And doff of the cap. Nice beanie, Tom. I enjoy that. That's a good look.
Thank you. So, yeah, when I bought this, we played golf, four of us, in a wind advisory. It was, you know what day it was? When Sawgrass 2 years ago. Remember nobody could hit the 17th? It was a Saturday of the players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we played over here in that same wind advisory, and I thought my ears were going to fall off at the turn. So I ran in and I grabbed the beanie.
So my buddy Trey Jones, the head golf coach at Florida State, designed that logo, and the millions that he could be making off of it, he does not, because he gave it to him for free. Do you believe there is any team that's unbeatable with a great offensive/defensive game plan and execution? No, I assume you mean by us. First of all, I might use somebody else's defense and somebody else's offense to do it, but no, I don't think there's an unbeatable team out there. I mean, you just saw Auburn nearly take down Alabama. Georgia, I don't think Georgia struggled at all with Georgia Tech. I've heard a lot of our fans say that that fourth quarter they were going through the motions after getting up big, but ended up being an 8-point game. I mean, it wasn't a blowout, obviously, and we've seen them have their moments. And yeah, no, there's no unbeatable team out there.
Yeah, I agree. It's
I think there's a tall task ahead of you.
It requires extreme offensive creativity where we are right now.
Well, goodness, that's not really a question. It's just a nice observation from Get Down or Lay Down. Jeff Cameron is a man among men. Watch his show or you may be deemed less of a man. You've been warned. If Tate has a poor game against Louisville, is it the right move to move on from him and bring in a transfer quarterback, or do we hand it over to Brock and Luke? I would hand it over to Brock and Luke.
Yeah, I tend to agree there. I would still let him compete in the spring. You know, it wouldn't be a great note to end the season on, but a veteran presence is a good thing, and somebody who knows the system is a good thing. I'll be interested to see, you know, not in this hypothetical, just generally speaking, how many quarterbacks, scholarship quarterbacks, are here in the spring and competing for the job. That'll be fun to see.
All of a sudden, my dog is barking for no.
Well, it's because we're live.
Yeah, it's because we're live. She hasn't barked yet, and all of a sudden, I would. So what's this next one? What's up, Nole fam? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. Go Noles, beat the Cards. Yeah, man. Florida State's going to go play well in this game. I think they'll be focused. I say play well. I think the defense knows that it's probably going to have to carry the day. I mean, they're at practice every day, too. They know how beat up this offense has been. You're missing your starting quarterback. By definition, you're going to have to put more emphasis on the defense carrying the day. But Tate's going to have to play better, too. You know, he can do much more than he did in this last game against Florida, and he better, or else they'll lose to Louisville.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they decide to run the ball against Louisville. You can do it. You can isolate against their linebackers. You know, we've been saying that the last few weeks, Miami being an exception. But Florida, you could isolate against their linebackers and do some things. But the tight ends aren't the healthiest room in the entirety of the offense, and that's saying something. You know, with Jaheim Bell being limited, he still makes plays. But if we're going to get the ball to him, let's do 0 pop passes and no runs out of the backfield. Let's see if we can get him in screens and down the field a little bit more. But I think you can work on their linebackers and find some mismatches. And hopefully what that would do as well is get them looking sideways for the running game to be able to hit them for a big one that way. I think as much as we've been talking about pass to run all season long, I think if they're going to do some things in terms of explosiveness on offense on Saturday night, oddly, I think it starts with Trey Benson and becomes run to pass, even though that's not the way that we're designed in terms of our skill set. But we'll see. We'll see. Riley Leonard has entered the chat, says Austin Green. Yes, he has entered the transfer portal with a designation, as I've read, that says, don't contact me. So it sounds like he knows where he's going next. But
he's a smart kid, hardworking kid. I enjoyed meeting him. I've mentioned this before at the ACC kickoff. I like that kid. I think he's got a ton of heart. I think he's a talented player. I think it was kind of tough situation, an ugly situation for him to get rolled out there against Florida State. I'm kind of torn on this because on the one hand, you know, I get where Elko was going. On the other hand, it didn't do him any favors. And he's a good player. Somebody's gonna get a good player.
Yeah, the speculation is Notre Dame. Am I foolish for thinking that our odds of beating Notre Dame are solid with him as the starting quarterback? I feel okay about that.
Well, I'm not going to tell you that it ruins our chances to beat Notre Dame. Yeah. I don't know that. I mean, I think he's a plus player, Tom. So, I mean, I don't know. I think a healthy version of him is a good player, but I don't know. Do I think he's freaking Lamar Jackson, or do I think, he's not that kind of a guy? No.
Am I wrong? Maybe I'm misreading this. Maybe it's Matt Ryan college version, but I feel like the world just wants to prop Riley Leonard up into this thing that he's not. Is he a good college football player? Yes. But is he a program changer, or like maybe it's because he was at Duke, he gets more due because they're successful and they hardly ever are. But I don't feel like this guy is like some sort of program changer or somebody who's going to take Notre Dame to where Hartman couldn't take them this year or anything like that.
Right. If the rest of the pieces around him aren't appreciably better, they'll do something similar that they did this year. Yeah.
Yeah. Happy championship hump day. I like that. Yeah, it's been a while since we've had one of these. Florida Man in Texas. Go Noles. Thanks for all the great content. Thank you. FDFC. Okay. Do you think we'll be able to run on Louisville? And we'll have to define that term because I think we will have some explosive runs. We're kind of turning into that 2021 running offense of late, where you're going to hit some big ones and then you're going to hit the wall head first a bunch. What do you think?
I think the only way you're going to line up and run the ball successfully is if Bless Harris is back and the rest of the offensive line has a semblance of health to it. Maybe Robert Scott's back. Maybe. If that happens, you might be able to line up and run the ball. But I just, at this point, they're not real good at lining up and running the ball, guys, and I don't think they're going to just suddenly do it. Now, there are things they can do that I like, and there are things that as the game wears on, they open up. You saw it in this last game. When they want them all, people, and they go 3 tight end set, and they get into where they run duo there, they run it well. It's fun to watch, especially if you ever get that angle down below, like the coaches film. That's cool to watch. They put a hurting on you here. And the running back's patience in that situation has been very important too, because there's just a lot of moving parts, a lot going on. And, but I don't know that you can just line up and do that and not suffer somebody getting beat in a one-on-one. Because at the end of the day, football is still about that. It's about physically somebody beating a man across from them. Yeah. And, so I think early in games, man, teams come at us and they win against our offensive line a lot of times because that's not a very talented offensive line.
I just wish we had more healthy, explosive players. Oddly enough, I watched most of the Kentucky game. I watched all of the Miami game and then a big part of Notre Dame for Louisville this morning. Woke up at 5.
That was a bad spot game for Notre Dame. I picked Louisville to win that game.
And that game's low scoring deep into they weren't blowing them out in the first half, put it that way. That was still a pretty close game throughout. But one thing I found, I was like you, I woke up at 5 in the morning. I was like, what am I going to do? So I decided to watch these games, and they get downhill, like both sides of the ball for Louisville. Their hair's on fire. The way they run the ball, it's not a lot of delay, stretch. You know what I mean? Like wait for the crease to open up and go. Like Jamar Jordan is a straight ahead guy, and if it's open for him and you're in the wrong gap, he's gone. Defensively, they bring a lot of pressures downhill. They're not afraid to crash. But one thing that's odd, I know it might be apropos of not much on Saturday, they seem to get burnt on a reverse once a game. Like that's how aggressive Louisville is. And I wish we had maybe Deuce Spann could get back in the rotation this weekend for something along those lines. But a healthy Destin Hill would be perfect in this situation for, again, some misdirection, some motions. It just seems like you can get them flowing one way and hit them another. But we're so banged up, it's like, who's going to be that person? Because I think that adds up to helping the running game, too. If you hit one of those, then they've got to honor the outside a little bit, and you can hit them up the middle with Trey. So it'll be fascinating.
Before you scroll up another question here, I want to answer this because I want it to be known that is incorrect. I think it was Britt asked the question. I've lost it. Did I give you tall boys for your correct W's and L's? Tom's W's and L's were not correct. Just as mine were not correct. Tom had us losing to Pitt and I had us losing to Clemson. We both chose 11-1. So there is no one-upsmanship on this program here tonight. No, sir.
Fair enough. Yeah, I didn't think I was owed any. So, yeah, that's fine.
No, I know. I just saw that randomly thrown in there. I'm like, hey, now, come on.
Robert D. Is Duffy just done and checked out? Well, he was passed. I don't know about done, maybe because he's passed by Brock Glenn. Clearly, again. I mean, Brock was the first guy off the bench this week on the road in Florida to help close out a game. I don't know about checked out. You'd have to ask him, but he's been passed,
Oh, I don't believe he's checked out at all. I think he's still practicing hard and focused. I just don't think he's been good enough, and I think he's been surpassed on the depth chart without question. And I don't know. You never know what's in a kid's heart or mind. You don't know what he's thinking about. He may want to stick around here and battle. Yep. If he does, they'll have to let him do that. But I don't know. If he thinks he can be a starter somewhere, then he will be a kid that is a prime candidate for the transfer portal.
AK Dogs, to Herbie and ESPN in my Terry Collins voice, you got to give us a shot. Nice callback. AK Dogs is a listener for sure.
I listened to Herb Street today. I guess he was on a show, and one of the things I liked about what I heard was he actually opened up and talked like a real human being and dropped an F-bomb and everything else. I think he was on one of the Sirius XM shows. I don't know. I just saw a video clip of it, and it was reasonable. I disagreed with him, but it was reasonable. People get mad. He does not think Florida State is one of the 4 best teams in the country. He is going to voice that opinion repeatedly. He does not think you owe it to Florida State to put him in there. Where I disagree with him is that I think that the games have to matter, and that Florida State is going to if Florida State finishes the season 13-0 as a conference champion in the Power 5, they would be the first ever to be left out in this situation. That is in the bylaws, if you will, of what the committee is supposed to look at. They're supposed to put an emphasis on conference champions, first of all. And so I think you would have to do that. I don't care if you think Alabama is better, or you think Washington is better, or you think Texas is better, or who. I don't really care. I get it. I have made arguments in the past that are similar to the argument that Kirby is making, that he's making, that Herb Street's making. And that is that I've seen teams that were ranked number 2 in the country, and I've gone on the air before, number 3 or number 4 in the country, and I've said, yeah, that team's not any good. Mm-hmm. They won some games early. That has been the straw that stirs the drink, and now everybody thinks they're good, but they're not.
Yeah, most years in playoff history, that number 4 team is trash. Like, the exception is Cardell Jones and Ohio State, and everybody remembers that. But
we all knew Notre Dame was ass.
Yeah. Michigan State one year, Washington another year. I mean, yeah, this is usually one of the semifinal games is garbage.
Right, and I don't think and I don't want to put us there, but we're not the team that lined up and beat LSU. And if we were, this would be a moot point. Nobody would be talking like this. But we're a beat-up team that has showed a ton of heart and has found a way, because they're well-coached and they're bought in and they've overcome some things. They got a little fortunate with the opposing quarterback situation week to week, all of the backups that they've faced. But they deserve a mountain of credit, and the games have to matter for something. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry that, Texas lost to Oklahoma. But I'm sorry that Oregon lost to Washington, or that you're going down the list of teams that have a loss, whatever. I'm sorry you lost. It's hard to go undefeated. That's why we're talking about it. I mean, it's a hard thing to do. And Florida State has done that. And I know they're not the team that started the year with that win over LSU. They're not.
And the other part of it is, if you want to get into some of these, nuanced levels of debate about what Florida State is or isn't, it is unmistakable to me that they are more accomplished than Michigan. They are more accomplished at this point than Washington. Now, Washington, if they beat Oregon in a non-fluky way this weekend, can change that narrative. But week to week, in terms of accomplishment, and I don't even know why we're having this argument with Florida State being singled out as an undefeated.
Well, because the superstar quarterback got hurt. That is the reason that Florida State is the subject of this discussion. They haven't looked good in 4 weeks, and their starting quarterback, who is a game-changing superstar, got hurt.
The problem is, and this is verifiable, is they were having this discussion, and by they I specifically mean Kirk Herbstreit, and I think McAfee was along for that segment. Before Jordan got hurt, they were having this discussion. On the set of Game Day, they were having.
I don't think they were seriously considering the idea that anybody could get in over them if they went undefeated and Jordan was still out. I mean, come on. I never heard anything like that.
That did happen in 2 segments. Now, it could be disingenuous, and I would agree with you, but they were having that discussion.
I think they were pontificating, was it possible? I don't think they were conviction, laden, saying to everybody that they're going to get past. I don't. Maybe it happened and I didn't see it. I'll allow for that. You'd have to show it to me.
I'd be surprised if you saw it. It's College Game Day. You don't watch that show, and I
don't watch it a ton. I watch it some, and that's about it. Yeah,
I try not to as much as I can either. Usually, you're just looking to see if Thamel's got the nuts on who's in and out for us, because for about a 4-week span, he was telling us what offensive linemen were in and were out.
Well, and there are certain segments I like that they do. It's not a complete loss, but yeah, I mean.
So let's see. 5:00 is the tentative time, but we're going to finalize that once we learn the internet situation in Charlotte. But 5:00 on Saturday is the pregame show. We want to give Jeff some time to get over to the stadium. There's going to be a lot of Noles fans on the way at that point. But while we're going, the SEC championship will be in its second quarter. The SEC championship kicks off at 4:00. So Britt asks, you're a betting man. What would you put the odds of the SEC missing the playoff at? Also, how great would it be to see Feinbaum whine some more? This, I think, let's see if you agree, would be an open and shut case. If Alabama wins, the SEC is not going to be in the playoff.
Yeah, barring like we lose.
Texas loses. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Somebody else has to lose. I think they're in trouble. And you want to talk about all hell breaking loose. Wait till you see the way that Paul Feinbaum and the rest of the SEC hacks lose their mind at the idea of a non-SEC playoff. And here's where they're wrong this year. They're not wrong in the past. They're not always wrong when they bring up the point about conference strength. But the SEC and out-of-conference games this year, not good. Not good. It has not been a strong year for the SEC out-of-conference. So you can't make that argument. I mean, look, Miami boat raced Texas A&M. Florida State ass-hammered LSU. I'm sorry, we can go through this list of games in which these teams either lost or looked terrible. I mean, what was it, Auburn's 3-point win over Cal? You had a bunch of games where everybody went, that ain't pretty. So they had opportunities and didn't play well. Now, there are exceptions here and there, but by and large, that conference did not show itself to be a dominant conference when it had the opportunity. North Carolina ass-hammered South Carolina. You can go on down the list, man. There's a bunch of games where you're kind of like, no, you don't get the – Utah killed Florida. Come on, man. We can keep going. This is what happened in the non-conference. Yeah,
and it's not like – I know what you're saying about it. It wasn't as close as people want to make it out to be, but it's not like Georgia blew out Georgia Tech 62-7. The game was within touch even through the first half. I think it was 21-14. So
I mean, I felt like,
but if you're talking about relative strength in a normal year, that would be 35-7 at half, and you'd be playing walk-ons in the second half of that rivalry game.
Right.
Hunter is he says still, I like the optimism that a natty is still loading right here, right now. So thank you for that, Hunter.
Man, I really appreciate that kind of optimism. I don't think Florida State is going to win the national championship, and I think it would really be a huge upset if they did. Currently, they would be underdogs to every team in the playoff that's in there. And they would be underdogs to a couple that aren't currently slated to be in the playoffs. So that would be a hell of a run.
If they did, I think Adam Fuller would get a statue built before Mickey Andrews because it would have to be the defense that completely dominates all the way to the podium. Lee's weekly question. And we got it. We got you, Lee, even the 1 week we didn't have the interactive hour. I hope you were watching that day. Who breaks the rock after we kick Dirty Bird ass on Saturday? Who you got? Don't you do it.
No, I think I'm going to pick a defensive player. I think
you do it.
You got to steal your guy.
I'll write it down.
Who breaks the rock? Jared Verse.
I was writing it down.
I think Jared Verse breaks the rock.
That's even got the stains from my espressos in the post game on there. So there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Breaks the rock. I think he kind of has to be dominant yet again, and I think he'll be dominant in this game. He is really playing well. And man, I think he's playing angry, and I think he gets it. It's on him. It's on Braden Fisk. It's on Josh Farmer. It's on Patrick Payton. That group up front has to dominate this game. And if they do, Florida State will win.
You know what? I'll give it to Peyton because that's a good point. He's been excellent this year.
Been awesome.
Old batted balls, Peyton officially credited.
That's my man.
9 balls batted by old batted balls, Peyton. Maybe he can get to his number by the end of the game.
Don't leave him exposed, gentlemen.
Clean 11. Maybe he'll come down with one with 2 hands and actually intercept a pass this weekend. He's shown great awareness, great motor all the way back to the LSU game. He's making plays 3 gaps over from his responsibility. If there's a swing pass that a guy breaks a tackle, because at times we don't tackle very well, and you're looking for dudes who are pursuing down the field, Peyton's there. Maybe it's his time to shine because you've got a statue of a quarterback. You could have a real chance here. Jared versus film, I think, would scare the crap out of anybody as an offensive coordinator. They got to have a game plan for him, maybe more one-on-ones for Patrick this weekend. On the other side of the ledger, what's the worst-case scenario? So from Lee, who breaks the rock, to Charlie, how do we have our spirits broken in the worst possible way this weekend?
Well, you just lose to Louisville, and that's the end of your season in terms of the playoff. You can just lose the game outright. Louisville's good. They're well coached. They're capable of beating Florida State, especially a beat-up Florida State. So you could just lose the game. I guess the worst-case scenario is certainly Alabama beating Georgia for starters. And then obviously Oregon would beat Washington. So now you've got a 1-loss Washington, a 1-loss Oregon, a 1-loss Alabama, a 1-loss Georgia, a 1-loss Texas. Yeah, we got a problem on our hands at that point. I
would say the worst case scenario, stay with me here, is Georgia loses, Michigan loses, Washington loses, we lose. So all
if we lose, we're out already.
I know, but the top 4 lose. And then somehow the final grouping is Oregon, because they would win by nature of beating Washington. It would be Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama, and Texas. And there we are at 5 or 6. And we're just like, everybody else lost, and we're just staring.
I may have misheard you there, but Georgia would be ahead of us with 1 loss. Georgia.
Yeah, they probably, of course they would be, but it's just like everybody loses. We might have had our chance to pick where we were going because And you're like, Jesus, we had to be one of those 2. Brian says he tells tell your shills to be more subtle when they're giving you praise, like get down or lay down. Fugazi, are you all alive again? 100% we are. Yes, Fugazi. Otherwise, this would be a really cool trick because I guessed you were going to post this. Spartan Nole. Yep. Ralph says losing you're out. That's very simple, but winning you're in. That's the other side of it. Winning you're in.
That is accurate.
Wesley, how much of an impact and that's West in the Villages, will the weather have on Saturday? And in what way if it's sloppy? We'll do it this way. Advantage whom do you think if it's a sloppy track?
I don't know how to gauge that. I don't probably advantage Louisville. They have 2 backs that are really good. They run the ball pretty well. I think they'd stack the box against us, and I don't think our offensive line can handle that.
Matthew, this is an impossible scenario, but sure, we'll entertain it for a moment. If we win and we're not put in the playoffs, I suppose you could, well, I'm not even going to put that out in the air. Would you do the UCF thing and ask for a co-national championship at that point? Let's say you beat Alabama in a bowl game and they don't put you in the playoff and you're 14-0. What do you do? Do you claim one? Do you hang your own banner?
I wouldn't pull that nonsense that UCF did, but I would certainly honor a 14-0 season, and I don't know, I'd find a way to maybe certainly point out the injustice of the moment. I don't know how you would do that. I have a hard time believing. I don't really even entertain the idea. I get it. We live in a cynical world, and it's been brought on by actual events, and there are a lot of moments where you wonder what the hell's going on. We're all jaded in a lot of ways. The internet certainly aids that. Our politicians don't represent us. We have a lot of problems that we're all well aware of and frustrated by. And I think it leads to that sort of cynicism that would have us sit here and think that a couple of one-loss teams, not one, but maybe 2 or 3, would jump us because the talking heads are using this opportunity as a platform in a made-for-money TV show to say crazy things to build ratings, to believe that it could actually happen. But I for one, don't believe that it could happen. I believe if Florida State goes undefeated, they are going to the college football playoff. And if they don't, then they have jumped the shark. We've lost track of what matters at this point. You have to win the goddamn games. You've played a whole season's worth of games. So, at some point, that has to account for something. This is a Power 5 team that, oh, by the way, beat LSU soundly. That's not nothing. That's a team that beat Florida on the road in Gainesville. That's not a good Florida team, but it's SEC talent. That's a team that beat Clemson on the road. No, man. No. We have jumped the shark. Now, again, if the games aren't going to matter and we're going to play this game where we're just going to randomly pick, and because it's subjective at that point, it is not objective. I can't sit here and tell you. Now, listen, I believe my opinion is more valuable than your opinion if you're listening to me right now. I think I know more than you. Great. Here's the deal. It doesn't matter because I would not argue, even though I may think that in the back of my mind, that I know for sure who the best team in the country is. That's subjective. We don't know that. This is not, they don't play like schedules. So you can't know. And that's why we kind of like the NFL, right? The NFL, at the end of the year, that's a meritocracy. If you make it in, you got a chance to win it all. And if you do, you did it. You might not have been the best regular season, but to go through the gauntlet that you have to as a wild card team and go all the way and win it, you clearly were the best team at the end of the year. So we don't do that in college football, though. We send around and we go, well, if they played at this time with this guy and it wasn't snowing, and then, by the way, don't forget they didn't have their left guard. I mean, we do this all the time. It's been going on forever in college football.
Yeah, but they don't play perfectly aligned schedules in the NFL, and there are plenty of times.
Go ahead.
But this is the thing I'm going to say. I'm going to come around to college football. We're at peace with it in professional football. We're at peace with it that if there is a matchup nightmare for you and you're an AFC divisional weekend,
right,
and New England's on the other side, and you know that you can't match up with New England and you're in for a dogfight, but they lose to whoever, the Colts, and you play the Colts and you beat the Colts, you got lucky in a sense, and you're like, I'm glad we didn't have to play New England. I'm just
right.
Indianapolis. We're at peace with that. Like nobody says, well, New England would have won if they just got past Indianapolis. But somehow in college football, we're doing that with Alabama and Texas, and we're doing it with Oregon, where they'll say, nope. Now, just because they lost that one game doesn't mean they're not one of the best 4 teams. Like, so if professional football was like what we're doing in college football, there would be a Super Bowl selection committee, and then the committee would say, I know that New England had lost to Indianapolis in the AFC divisionals, but they're the best. They're one of the 2 best teams. So we're putting New England in the Super Bowl. That's the stupidity of what we're doing.
But college football, I will say, this is not new. This has been going on forever. People hated the BCS, which I happen to like, by the way. People hated the BCS. They wanted a committee. How about we just get some intelligent football people in there? We can't trust a computer to tell us what's what. Well, yeah, you kind of can. But anyhow, do you really think you're going to find a committee of objective observers? You really think you're going to find people that are 100% objective? They're going to sit in a room and go, I may have graduated from Texas, but I got to be honest with you. That other team, they're a little better than my team, and we have the same resume. I think you should put them in. That ain't never going to happen. Yep. And so no matter how objective any of us think we are, we aren't. And it's nearly impossible.
Yeah, the number one criteria is conference championship. Your Power 5.
I brought it up to start the show.
Yeah, it's all done there. It's fun though. It is fun that we just killed 6 minutes and it was compelling. Florida man in Texas. Does Michael Langston get overtime for the whole month of December, or does he just cramp his yearly work into 3 months? Well, the battle's end has made it more busy for everybody in December and the subsequent months. But you know what? He gets plenty of off time too. I think he takes a straight month in Hawaii, so it all evens out at the end.
Does he really?
I think so. Yeah. Spartan Noel can confirm that.
Langston, you got a month in Hawaii? What kind of deal did I sign? Goodness gracious.
Jordan Travis was named the ACC Player of the Year and Offensive Player of the Year. That looks like he's copying and pasting from a little release from the ACC, but it's more than notable, and it's really, really cool because not often does a guy with hype coming into a preseason, whether he's the league star or a team star, follow through. See Taj Boyd in 2013. But Jordan did it. And he was most deserving, I think, for Player of the Year because, number one, Riley Leonard goes down and he's injured, so that waters down the field just a little bit. But that dude did everything necessary. And, Buddy, when we reflect on the year, he had a couple of games like the Wake game on the road, the Pitt game on the road, that are simply phenomenal given the circumstances of what he was working with on those given days. The sad part is he was improving as a passer a lot in these final month to 6 weeks of the season, and I wish I could have seen him chuck it around the lot against Louisville this weekend.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And by the way, the next thing is, so when does the Coach of the Year get announced?
Maybe tomorrow?
ACC Coach of the Year?
It's probably Brom. We'll give it to Brom, I would think.
No, it's got to be. I honestly, I think it has to be Norvell.
The last time a Florida State head coach was named Coach of the Year was 1997.
97, Bobby Bowden, yeah, which is kind of weird and random in a way. But what I would tell you is that Louisville team wasn't terrible that he inherited, and Brom's done a good job. But undefeated off of a 3-loss season the year before. Florida State was not picked to win the conference, by the way. Road win at Clemson, undefeated, Player of the Year, quarterback. Come on now. I mean, when are you not going to give that to Mike Norvell? I'm sorry. In some ways, Brom probably lost the award when they lost to Kentucky at home.
That's possible.
I mean, I think he did. I think he lost the award right then and there.
Hillbilly Reefer, one of the great names, says hello. Hello, Hillbilly Reefer. William Kersey, y'all don't think it would be a good idea for a 1-year bridge than to turn it over to Brock and Cromenhawk? No. If this team next year had so many returning pieces that a veteran quarterback presence who is a game manager, maybe a little bit more than that, puts you in the playoff or a national championship contention, like straight up with Georgia and Alabama and all, then sure. But I don't think we're there.
That's the point I made earlier today. I think that next year's team takes a step back regardless, unless you get a couple of guys that fall into your lap that are world, class players, 5 stars at a couple of positions that you desperately need that you didn't think were going to be available, maybe. But I think they have to take a step back. It's not sustainable to go out and get 12 to 15 guys in the portal. And I think if you start recruiting the way that Florida State is currently recruiting, meaning you are bringing in a top 5 class, top 4 class, top 3 class, whatever, you are not going to have the capital to go out and go get a Keon Coleman and like an equivalent to Keon Coleman at quarterback and defensive end and linebacker and safety and running back. You're not going to have it because those classes, let's just be big boys here and talk about it. They don't come cheap. Those kids may sign with Florida State without inducements, but they're not doing it because they don't think they're going to get an NIL deal. So let's be honest about what's going on here.
There's a smarter use of your resources than a bridge quarterback. You might as well turn the keys over, see what you got. Because look, if Glenn can't handle it, then Luke will the next year. You might as well. I mean, it's funny in college football. It happens really fast. Like that's a true freshman I'm talking about. But if he doesn't have it down by the end of next season, then I mean, he's worried about the freshman right over his shoulder. Look what AJ Duffy has just gone through in the last calendar year. I mean, that guy, everybody was wondering, when's it Duffy's turn? And now we're looking at Glenn. So Brock doesn't want that to happen to him. Give him a shot. Matt Hulse, thank you for the contribution. Takeaways from this season, the JCS is transcendent. Feinbaum and Kirk are going to riot if FSU gets in. Also, ESPN needs to make McElroy the president.
So So listen, McElroy pissed everybody off 2 or 3 weeks ago with a take that was anti-Florida State. And a week later, he's like, no, I think Florida State's in. Listen, he's generally pro-FSU, all of them at various points besides Feinbaum, who's not on a committee of any kind. He's on a show where he sits there, looks stupid, and asks dumb fans to call in. So that's not – I mean, that's – it. Anyhow, The point would be
Ain't that America?
the point would be, again, those guys are actors playing a role with a script. Now, do I think off the field they might tell you something that you would disagree with and argue with and that you would have a problem with? Sure. Because I do believe that maybe in his heart of hearts, Herb Street doesn't think Florida State's one of the best four teams. But I talked about how you could have that opinion, and I don't hate you for it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between having that opinion and then saying that Florida State doesn't deserve to be in.
Right.
So they're two different arguments. I mean, Vegas would favor, at this point, 5 to 6 teams ahead of Florida State in a head-to-head matchup on a neutral field.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. And, I mean, look at this line this weekend. Is Louisville a world beater? No, it's inside a field goal. So, I mean, it's self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Aaron, extension of that conversation. Would this even be a conversation if Clemson was 13-0 in conference championship? Fascinating point. Based on recent reputation, do you think Clemson would be talked about, bantied about, and like Florida State if they were 13-0 conference champions? Because again, I will preface, this conversation started before Jordan Travis got hurt. It did. 100%.
Yeah, but Tom, I think you have to define that. I do not think it was this boisterous or anything close to it. I did not hear people routinely saying Florida State with Jordan Travis should not be in the playoff. I don't think you're saying that.
I am. In this case, I know.
Well,
yes.
Are you on the committee? Well, okay.
No, not the committee. An open discussion on game day, and that's the conversation he's talking about. The pundits circling around and having a discussion. McAfee, Desmond, and Kirk were talking about moving Florida State off that 4 seed line, even with Jordan Travis a few weeks back on game day. Like that did happen.
I would tell you that if Florida State had ruled the day for the better part of a decade in the ACC and won 2 national championships along the way in doing so, and then was having a moment in which a player got hurt, they probably would get the benefit of the doubt. Like Clemson would get the benefit of the doubt because that happened. And we would too, if that's where we were arriving at this place from. But instead, we are kind of in a weird way the surprise of college football. I know that sounds strange. We were preseason top 10 after all. It wasn't like people didn't believe that we were a good football team. But Florida State had gone an awful long time without accomplishing a damn thing. And then suddenly went from 10-3 to 12-0. And I think it has caught people by surprise. And then you have the devastating injury to Jordan. I do think it's kind of year to year. I'll tell you this. I remember that same Kirk Herbstreit saying that Florida State's the best team in the country and it's not close after the Clemson game when Jameis was quarterback. And he went on to champion that Florida State team, repeatedly telling everybody who would listen that it's not close. Florida State was the best team he had seen by far.
Yeah. Well, and it was.
And you remember that, though, and you remember that.
He was smiling. Oh, of course I do. Yeah. Look, I mean, it's like you said earlier today. If you're in this game long enough, you're on either side of a fan base because you're going to speak what you believe to be true. Everybody loved Kirk when he said, I want Florida State to be back, and he might have been a little tipsy talking with Fowler. Remember that video of them sitting on the couch? And he's like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of it being soft. Yeah. So, and everybody loved him for that. It goes back and forth. Let's see. Jeffrey, if no playoff game, meaning a loss this weekend, does Darrell Jackson come back another year with Farmer? Do you think that the playoff/bowl game fate for Florida State has any bearing on Darrell Jackson's status for next year?
It's hard to read Darrell Jackson, guys. I don't know what to say about that. I think the emphasis from the battle's end will be on getting Farmer back and Peyton back. And I don't know Darrell Jackson's situation regarding school. I'm not intimating anything. I just don't know. He hadn't played football this year. So if he doesn't get the opportunity to play football, but for in a glorified exhibition game, say Florida State loses to Louisville, and the only game he gets to play in is a glorified exhibition game. First of all, I don't even know if he'd play in it at that point. And secondly, I don't know, man. I don't know what to say about him. I think obviously that if you could find a way to bring him back but not break the bank, and you could get him to play. He's a dominant figure. He's a dominant player. He changes the dynamic of your defensive line next year in a huge way. If you tell me next year Florida State lines up once again with Patrick Payton and Joshua Farmer and Darrell Jackson and whomever you want over there on the other side, yeah, man, I feel pretty good about that group up front. The starting four there for the front four is really good. Really good. If he's gone, you got some work to do. I mean, I like Malcolm Ray, but he ain't Darrell Jackson.
Yeah, that's correct. No disrespect, and he's had a really good year. If you win the toss, do you kick or receive? Asks Charlie. Feel like we need the first points to set the tempo.
No, I'm kicking. I think it's going to be raining and windy, and I'm playing defense, and I'm going to pin him down deep, and I'm going to try to win field position early.
Okay. I see that. They probably would, too. We finally won the toss last week. I was like, oh, my God, we're kicking. Look at us. Everybody in the country is rooting for us to lose. Many are, because we have 0 losses, and there's a lot of fan bases that want to see his spot open up. Do you think Mike is using any of that for motivation? I don't think it's extra motivation. Do you?
No, I think certainly it's not lost on those guys that there are a lot of people who either disrespect their accomplishments, have ignored their accomplishments, have, sort of talked over those accomplishments because they have an idea that Texas is better, Oregon is better, Washington is better, Alabama is better. Like, a lot of people are of that opinion. So if it fits them in the narrative, they sit down and they say, look, Florida State, nice story, good season. You know what, guys? You're just not good enough without your starting quarterback. That's the way they do it. I think Mike largely ignores that kind of stuff, but players probably hear it. And certainly if anybody ignores you when you've worked very hard and you've succeeded and you feel galvanized and together, you can certainly use that as an ultimate FU, but I don't think that you get 7 plays into the game and you're thinking about what somebody else is rooting for. I don't think that happens.
Yeah. Next up, let's see. R. Wilmer asks, who and how effective will the slot receivers be this game? The who is always a tough one. Ja'Kai came up with a humongous catch last week, so he's got to be near or at the top of the list. But then do you count tight ends in that role? Or
I was going to say, you got to count tight ends in that role, and I think this is a big boy game.
Yeah. And how effective do you think they'll be? I think linebacker is a weakness for them in coverage, personally.
I agree with you, just like I did before we played Florida, but we really didn't get a chance to exploit that as much as I thought we would. I really hate that Jaheim Bell's just not healthy. And he continues to play, and I'm glad that he toughs it out, but he's not the difference maker he was earlier in the season. He does contribute. He still matters. He's just not nearly as explosive at that size as he was earlier in the year. I think Morlock's a good player, but he's not a huge difference maker. Unfortunately, Marquiston Douglas hasn't played well this year.
No, he had a good block on the touchdown, thankfully, because I felt like that was his value, was being able to road grade. Would be nice to see that guy come to life this weekend. Could use him right about now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's I think it's an opening, but we'll see. If Georgia's quarterback, asked Paul, fell in the shower and broke his arm tonight, would they move Georgia out of the top 4? First of all, I didn't know he played for the New York Mets, because that's a very New York Mets thing to happen. But
no. By the way, that kid's a really good player, unfortunately. I like watching him play. He's smart already. It sucks for us. It sucks for everybody.
It's funny. Watching this chat, it's funny. It's like contagious. When we talk about one thing, there could be a brand new topic that we're not even hinting at, and it like just takes on its own life. There are a ton of offensive line questions. So I'll pull, let's see, Panama Jack. Will Bless and Scott play? If they can play now, it's time. Worry about healing after the game. There's another one that says, why does Atkins keep Bless and Scott on the sidelines? Byers ain't getting it done at right tackle. Are Armella and Early really a drop-off from what we've seen? What kind of offensive line combination would you like for the game this Saturday? So,
all right, Linda, let me go this route here. I have had the same starting 5 that I'd like to see every week of the year. I don't think we've seen it, but maybe, once, maybe at all.
With Robert at left?
Yeah.
Like for a few series, he worked in.
For a few series. Because I think it's Robert Scott at left. It's Maurice at center. At right, it's Bless Harris. Your guards, I haven't loved our situation at guard. Let's put it that way. But Darius has to play somewhere, and I like Darius a lot. So he's one of the guards. And I guess you could interchange whoever you want given the situation with Meach and Roddick and Jones. So probably Jones more than most of those guys. So that's my starting five.
All right, last part of it, FDFC. Do we actually think Robert Scott and Bless Harris will play? And if they do, will they be effective?
Well, if they're playing, they're going to be effective because that means they're finally healthy. I don't think they put them out there at all. They certainly have not bothered to risk further injury with either one of those guys.
It's more likely that Bless would play, but that's not insider. That's just common sense because Bless has played more this year. So let's see. Terry asks, if we win Saturday, do you feel that there is time, I should say, to be a truly healthy team by the playoffs with the type of injuries we've endured?
Well, Jordan Travis ain't coming back. So he's the best player you have at the most important position on the field. And he's out for the year and he's not coming back. We could play 6 months from now and he's not coming back. So no. Now, what you're talking about is the offensive line. And you're also talking about Jaheim. And you're also talking about Destin. And you're also talking about Hakeem. So in the spirit of the question, I will tell you that I think there would be a chance that Destin is back. There's a chance that Hakeem is back. There's a chance that you get the best version of Maurice Smith you've seen in over a year. There's a chance that Bless would start and be good. I don't know about Robert Scott. I'm done speculating on Robert Scott. I don't feel like I can trust the idea that just because he's out there practicing, he's going to play, because he's out there practicing all the time and he never plays.
Yep. Agreed. Let's see. We've got a couple contributions. Austin Stinson. Thank you, Austin. Longtime Florida State and New York Giants fan. Prior to last year, my football viewing as a fan was rough. What do you think of the Giants? We made the playoffs last year. I laugh when you mention them. Love all your content. What do you think of the G-Men?
So I thought that what happened with them beating the Patriots was hilarious because of the dubious numbers that were associated with the fact that they did. Bill Belichick, one of the great coaches in the history of football, really should call it a day because it's starting to mount some of these numbers, the aforementioned dubious. You are watching teams like them lose to a team like the Giants, who is, I think the Giants are, if not the worst team in football, they're on the same plane as Carolina and aforementioned Patriots. That was a war, by the way, Austin. So you're talking about those are probably the three worst teams in football. Now that the Bears beat the Vikings, I think we have to say that it's the Cardinals, the Giants, Carolina, and the Patriots.
Yeah. I'd oddly love to see a 4-team playoff with those groups, those squads. Play it
under 17.
Give it to me on Sunday morning at 9 a.m., man. I'd tune in. That'd be a lot of fun. Play the unders. Just play the unders across the way. Spartanol chimed in that Langston it's a long week, not a month. All right. It's an extended time for Michael out there in Hawaii. Let's see. We've talked about it already, but I want to see if you go off the board with somebody else. Who will be the most impactful and most valuable defensive player in this game? You mentioned Verse, I mentioned Peyton. That doesn't necessarily mean that somebody else might not be more valuable in the spot. You have anybody else?
More valuable than Jared Verse? Is that what you asked?
Mm-hmm. Or impact?
Yeah, I think you nailed Patrick Peyton, right?
Yep. I think Akeem Den again in this game. They do a really good job of motions and getting linebackers out of gaps. You'll need to clean a run or two up. And that happens. That's football these days anyway for any team. But Akeem was so impressive last week at being the last line of defense as the safety is. But then coming up and stopping a play for a gain of 6, it wasn't even a 20-yard gain. He did that a couple times where it's, man, extremely valuable. Steven, I know the answer to this question from Jeff. Should Tate pull the ball and run early?
Yes. I've been screaming about it for a bit. Yes, he should. I thought Jordan should have much more often during the course of the year. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
King Spleen, would it be better to run out of a 4 wide receiver set to spread the defenses out, creating running lanes?
Depends on the wind and rain, man. I generally over the course of the year have said, well, really, I think, Tom, the first time I brought up to you was maybe like week 3 or 4, where I was like, man, we're just not going to be able to run traditionally. Let's spread them out and start throwing the ball and then run from there. Get them out of the box.
Yep. I think the weather plays a big factor in it. And I wonder if they feel like themselves that they found something with duo and condensed sets. I wonder if they try that a little bit more. Gritty Gang 27. Jeff, are we hammering the -2.5? Seems like free money. You're normally spot on.
Had a good year. I'm over 500 right now, both on the air and in my private life. And it's been fun that way. I'm leaving the game alone because I'm a little worried about the weather. I may pull the trigger on something late as we get closer to game time. I've been kind of eyeing the under a little bit here if the weather is really inclement. But I'm not touching it right now. I didn't bet it early in the week.
Okay.
Either way, if you'd bet it early in the week, golly, if you were a Louisville guy, you should have jumped on, what was it, 5.5 when it first came out?
It was.
You should have already, yeah, if you missed your window, guys, it's down to 2.5.
All right, let's see. Rapid fire here. We're at 7:51 already, man. Time's flying. Thank you for everybody for being here. This has been outstanding.
Three more minutes.
Three more minutes. Hit the thumbs up, people. Kayvon, when we win the title, will you do the JCS in a toupee? No trilogy, no problem.
You guys want me to break out the toupee?
If we win the title, that's a reasonable ask.
Sure, I'd throw on a toupee. We'd get a funny one, right? I had to get a funny one.
Got to get like the Costanza.
Look at how long this hair is getting. Good Lord, I'm a hippie out here, guys. Look at it. You can see it. You can see the ring. Look at that. Look at how stupid that looks.
All right. He says yes. We've got it on the books. Quantrill knows what's more likely. FSU has more departures from quarterback room or running back room. Outgoing market.
I would say the running back room.
That would be 2-1 at that. Well, now Tate could. Okay, I see you working. If you play it out all the way through the spring and Tate doesn't win the battle, maybe Tate leaves.
I have an opinion about that. I don't think Tate's going anywhere.
Okay.
Whether he wins the job or not.
We've answered this question about, do you think they can get healthy enough? The O-line could. That would help if they win.
Give me Bless Harris back at least.
Yeah, exactly. Did we lose Atkins to Duke this offseason? Or does Duke want to lock in their coach while the transfer portal is still open in December?
You think that they want to hire him as a head coach?
That's what Florida Man in Texas is getting at, I believe, yes.
No.
All right. Paul Miller says 69 Mets. You got to believe. I love it. That's outstanding. Let's see. What happened to the value of the early season wins that the ACC had over the SEC, asks R. Wilmer.
I brought it up earlier tonight. I brought up the wins in the out-of-conference, and it's easy to forget about it. 12 weeks ago, it happens every year. But it is frustrating. I mean, that's why the SEC's case this year in particular is not nearly as strong as it's been in years past. But not as good this time around.
B Sizzle. We all know the CFP is an imperfect system. Does the 12-team playoff solve the issue? If it was up to Jeff and Tom, how would you guys fix the playoff?
Well, I don't think we can fix it. College football is never going to be perfected in this regard. The way it's set up is it's just not going to be perfected. When we get to 2 super conferences and then everybody else is playing in a tier below that, you're going to get a lot closer. Yep. So if this becomes Fox versus ESPN, in other words, some version of a super Big Ten and a super SEC, and I suppose a third struggling Big 12, I suppose, would be the remainder. But maybe not devoid of hope, especially if they adapt and grab some of these teams that are not going to be in the, Pac-12. Then I think you have a chance because everybody then is in the same swimming pool. At that point, everybody is all aboard with big boy football. We know what's going on at that point. And then I have no problem with the fact that you could see, let's say, if I'm just doing hypotheticals here, but if all of a sudden you're watching a Wake versus Marshall game and it's at a different level, a level below, they didn't opt in to the big boy pseudo semi-pro football. you'd still watch that and enjoy that. I watch games all the time. I watch Tulane versus Memphis. I'll watch any of those games and have a good time, and I'll bet on it, and I'll sit down and say, hey, these are two evenly matched teams. It's a fun matchup. It's a good game. Let's watch it. I just know what I'm watching at that point. I don't kid myself and delude myself into thinking that either one of those teams could compete week in and week out at a higher level. I just know in the moment, these are good, evenly matched teams. So you get closer at kind of weeding out who's in, who's out, and why. You wouldn't have some of the circumstances you have now. But no, I don't think it's there's not a perfect system. 12 teams. Next year, we're going to be arguing about a lot of dumbassery. There's going to be somebody sitting there at 13 or 14. It's like, hey, we're the best 2-loss team in the country. Mm-hmm. We're the best 3-loss team in the country. We should get in.
So for me, it's simple. You got the Power 4 conferences next year. Those champions are in. That's 4. They have the system in place. Yeah, but I would have the BCS fill out the top 10, and then you could have a committee choose 2. And there's your television show for 2 teams to get in.
Well, hold on. While we're on the subject, here I'm going to run late because I care about the people.
Yes, you do.
Here we go.
I've got 22 more questions.
I'm going to pull this up, okay? All right. So what we have here, the 12-team playoff based on the 6+6 format, which was approved.
And it's going to change to 7+5 because the pack doesn't exist anymore. But yes, go ahead.
Okay. So if things were to start, if the 12-team playoff started tonight or this year, 6 automatic bids to the highest-ranked conference champs, 6 at-large bids to the next highest-ranked teams. Top 4 champs get buys. 5 to 8 seeds host on-campus first-round games. This is what Tom wants. Now, and I can't wait for. So we would have a bye right now. Yep. All right? We would be in a bracket in the Orange Bowl. We'd be awaiting the winner of Oregon and the aforementioned Tulane. Okay? Alabama would take on Missouri for the right to play Georgia in the Peach Bowl. If it happened right now. We're in the bracket that's on the side of the Sugar Bowl. The Rose Bowl side would be Michigan getting a bye. Texas would be playing Penn State and thanking their lucky stars because they'd kick the hell out of them, as everybody does. And they would go to the Cotton Bowl to take Michigan on. Ohio State would be playing Ole Miss, and Washington would be waiting for that winner in the Fiesta Bowl. Now, I don't know who to pick in that game, but I'd probably take Ohio State. So you're probably looking at a Final Four or as we move forward here, not Final Four. You'd be looking at Michigan, Penn State rematch, Michigan, Texas, great game. Ohio State, Washington, Georgia, Alabama, and Florida State, Oregon in the next round.
Yeah.
Kind of fun, right? And that game would be played in the Orange Bowl if we played them. The Fiesta Bowl would host Washington and Ohio State. Michigan would be in the Cotton Bowl against Texas, and Georgia would be in the Peach Bowl against Alabama in a rematch.
And you know what? We'd be playing this game with a totally different attitude because we're in a playoff game for ourselves, not for Louisville this weekend. But we'd play this game on Saturday night, and I'd say, I'd love if we win, but if we don't, we're hosting a playoff game. We'll probably be the 7 or the 8 seed. So either way, we win. And that'll be the difference in the experience.
Yeah, what happens starting next year is that we all get antsy about whether or not we're going to put ourselves in a position to get a bye.
Yeah.
Everybody's fighting for a bye.
But in this particular circumstance, with your starting quarterback hurt, I'd be like, I don't know that the bye matters, so let's get that home playoff game. Let's get some people to town here.
That is the one aspect of this that I love is the home playoff game, walking into Doak Campbell Stadium in a December game when it's cold. Well, if we're lucky enough that it's cold, and you walk in there and it's a playoff game for Christ. Oh man, that'd be great. That'd be great.
All right, rapid fire. Garrett, since NCAA is finally coming back after 10 years, what position will you choose, and what school do you want to sign with?
First of all, when I do this, I'm Coach Cameron. I'm no longer a player. I'm not on the field anymore. My days have passed me by. I've become a seasoned vet, well-respected, and I'm taking over Army. I'm tired of Army being kicked around. It's nonsense. We are going to bring a championship to West Point. And I am at that point making sure that my offensive linemen have the black tape up high on those ankles. No ankle injuries for Coach Cameron. You're not allowed to wear a black visor unless you are a middle linebacker, fullback, tailback. In certain cases, if you are an elite wide receiver, I'll let it slide. The defensive ends, high tape as well. I want you to appear slow. Tight end, no gloves, but you can wear wrist tape. We are good to go from here. My linebackers are going to wear the old school neck brace to appear bigger than they are, and you're allowed to wear tape around your biceps as if you're a wrestler. This is the team that I field. Now, we'll go 6-6 our first year, overachieve, and be spoken of highly.
You should allow them to almost tassel the end of the bicep tape so it really is 80s era.
Ultimate Warrior style. I got you.
Yep,
then from after that 6-6 season, it is a big deal. Coach Cameron's being talked about. They have a surprising recruiting class. It's looking like there may be some shenanigans going on at West Point because we're pushing the envelopes on those recruits. That meter is moving in the wrong direction. We're outright paying players, doing the things that you got to do to turn it around. We will run an offense conducive to cold weather victory. We are not spreading it out and throwing it all over the lot. We're going to beat you up. We're going to bruise you. We're going to run a lot of option. We're going to play some play action. We're going to have fun. We're going to dominate with defense. So this is the type of team that I'm fielding right off the bat. Now, there are whispers almost immediately, Tom. By year 3, Coach Cameron has been rumored to take another job. He is being asked to take jobs all over the country. The SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, Pac-12, you name it. But Jeff is loyal to Army. His dad was in the Army. His grandfather was in the Army. He's going to take a special offer to woo Jeff away from Army. So, I wait for that. And I wrestle with it. I ask my family what I think we should do. I go to bed after a 7th victory on the season, 7-0, and it's careening towards this decision-making time. But we won't know till the end of the season, and I have no more comments about it. I will not talk about it until the time is right. Please understand, this place is a special place to me, and I care deeply about the Knights, and we're going to see what kind of season we can finish out with.
If I had to pick a position, Coach, it would be safety, and because I really like the gameplay of the one person with the safety, there's a lot you can do with it. I'd go to Troy as a coach because I want to run down the establishment that is Alabama and that is Auburn. Even though I could go to UAB and do it directly, how they did UAB dirty in the politics they've played over the years.
Sons of bitches.
I want Troy to rise in the state of Alabama.
Okay.
And once I get that thing fixed and Florida State deems me worthy, I'll take that job at Florida State. Everybody knows I want that job at Florida State, but I'm not going to leave until Troy makes its mark in the state of Alabama and we get promoted to the upper end of college football. And
yeah, and by the way, I'm a beloved coach by the time I leave Army because I've got them back in their rightful place. But the problem is that, Tom, I don't want to play down there in the South. It's hot as Hades. Get me to a cold weather place where I can run the option and play great defense, a little old school.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there. Now, I can play any offense you want. I'll open it up later on when I'm on the West Coast.
I'm going to sound like Steve Lavin, though, as the coach. I'm going to have a New York accent for Troy. They're going to be so uncomfortable, but so happy with the wins.
They don't like you ordering the eggs at the diner, buddy. They don't like to hear it.
Yeah. Everybody, we're going to have toast and time with Tommy, Coach Tommy, on a Sunday. Okay, understand? Come in. We're going to have talks. Open mic. Come on, questions. Go ahead. And they're going to be like, "What in the world?" But he keeps winning. We can't get rid of this guy. Contributions, FSU fan 93. Best case CFP scenario. Worst case scenario for Florida State.
Oregon winning. I know that's. I don't want to. Well.
Whatever gets us to face Michigan is the best case scenario.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what that is. Yes. How do we face Michigan?
That's Oregon winning, Georgia winning, and the committee not having Oregon jump us into the 3rd spot.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's right. That's correct.
Worst case playing Georgia, yeah?
This is it. Last 2 questions. I got to go. I'm starving.
Thank you, FSU fan. Appreciate it. Dane, if FSU wins the ACC championship and gets left out, could they sue the ACC citing direct harm so we can be released from the conference? That's funny. And Nick, is winning the ACC, not getting into the playoff and winning a bowl game a better outcome long-term, versus getting in and losing badly in the play.
No, I want to be in under any circumstance if we can get in. I think it does a lot for you as a university financially. It does a lot in general. Now, I hear you, man. I have thought about the scenario. If you got matched up against Georgia, the way that we're banged up right now, that could get ugly. I don't think that Florida State is going to have much. Now, Tom, let's be honest here now. This is where it gets real.
Mm-hmm.
You want to see Tate line up with this offensive line against that Georgia team? Come on now.
I want to play Michigan. I'm not accepting any other outcome than we're playing Michigan in the semifinal.
Hey, let's have a good night, man. Be good. That's it. That's all. Interactive Hour was fun as always. Thanks to all of you. Tomorrow's a travel day for the JCS. I am on the road to Charlotte, and you will have a show. It's just gonna kind of be pieced together by some things we put together this week, and then also stuff from tonight even. And don't forget, if you're going up to Charlotte, Resident Culture is the name of the restaurant and bar that we're going to be at, 332 West Bland Street. That is on Friday at 6:30 p.m. You can read that there, obviously. A lot of good times. Doors open up pretty early, so whenever you want to get there, all ages, come hang out and let's do it up. Be good, everybody. Go Noles.